This is the Chappell Real Estate Show, episode number 14.
Welcome to the Chappell Real Estate Show, your source for the latest real estate information so you can buy, sell, and invest with the best in Texas. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a current homeowner, or a seasoned investor, you've come to the right place. We're here to simplify all things real estate so you can achieve your goals of property ownership with your hosts, Daniel and Roger Chappell.
What's up, and thank you guys for tuning into the Chappell Real Estate Show, your source for the latest real estate information so that you can learn how to buy, sell, and invest with the best. I'm your host, Daniel Chappell, and today we have an awesome episode for you guys, and we got to bring on one of our clients who worked with us twice, both to buy and sell in the last 6 months or so. So we thought it'd be a really fun and unique opportunity to bring somebody on who can share from their perspective as both a buyer and a seller what it's like to work with the Chappell Realty Group and some of the unique things that happen in the transaction that hopefully you guys can use to learn a little bit and prevent these kinds of hiccups in your own transactions. So stay tuned and check out the episode.
Hello, everybody. I hope you all are having a great week so far. Just wanted to introduce our guest today, Eric Deba. Eric and his wife, Sarah, came to me about 6 months ago looking to buy a house. And during that period, we learned that they actually had a house they needed to sell and not just buy. So that presented a unique opportunity for our team to be able to showcase some of the things that we do. And it seems like we hit it off pretty well, don't you think, Eric?
Absolutely.
All right. So, Daniel, take it away.
Yeah. Well, Eric, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your situation and how you came to start working with the Chappell Realty Group?
Sure. I was living in the Cedar Park area and thought about possibly moving since I had been in my house since 2007. I bought a brand new and saw the value of the other houses in my neighborhood. Thought I'd be able to get a bigger house since I was been there in 2007 and the equity in it was, as everybody knows, the price of houses are astronomical right now.
Yeah.
Even 6 months ago. So I went out to Georgetown and I, looked at a couple houses, but I fell in love with one spectacular house. It had everything, even had solar panels on it. And my wife continued to look at other houses, and that's where she found Roger at another open house. Mm-hmm. While she was out there, I was at work, so she FaceTimed me, and I started talking to Roger, and we agreed to meet up at the house, our current house in Cedar Park at the time. And I met Roger there, I think it was maybe a day later, 2 days later, whatever it was. We agreed to, have him sell our house for us, So initially, I had to make an offer on the house, obviously, right? Yeah. So before I did that, I had to have a, what do we call when you put your house on
Contingency?
So I want to make a contingency. Obviously, I had to have my house for sale first. So
right.
Roger came out, and at the time, he just took 2 pictures of the outside. He planned on bringing one of his photographers in the next day to take interior pictures. Mm-hmm. But that never happened because that evening, he took 2 pictures of the outside, and he started getting inundated with calls with interest. So I think within the first 2 days, we had over 30 people come look at the house. And then I think we had 12 offers, 9 of them over ask, which was spectacular. Blew my mind. I wasn't expecting to get that much for the house.
Well, thanks, Eric, for the introduction. We really appreciate you sharing your story with our listeners. So really quick, we want to do what we call the Chappell Chunk. So during this portion of the episode, we like to give a little piece of information to our listeners, kind of a tip that they can use to kind of help them through, the real estate process. So today, we actually wanted to, give a piece of advice from your perspective. All right. So, Eric, what is going to be the Chappell Chunk for today?
The Chappell Chunk, I would say, if when you're looking for a realtor, somebody to sell your house and buy another one, make sure you're dealing with somebody that has experience and they're professional and they know what they're doing, just in case you run into problems during the sale or purchase of the other house.
Absolutely. That's great advice, and don't take that with a grain of salt. There's there's a lot of people out there that are in this profession, and not just this profession, but the ones related to it, title, lender, every now and again you may need a legal consult, those types of things. So you want to make sure that you're working with somebody who's experienced, and we've mentioned this many times on episodes past, but the relationship is so crucial in this business. So keep that in mind, guys. So, well, let's kind of tap back into Eric's story a little bit. So let's kind of talk about what the process was of listing your home. So we know that it happened very quickly from what you've told us so far. How long did it take to actually get your home on the market from the time that you met with Roger and actually had the house on the market ready to go?
I think less than 2 days, if I recall right. It's been 6 months. Was it 2 days, or is it less? Or?
From the time that I met Sarah, it was, I think, day 4. It was within 2 hours of me meeting you.
Right. Yeah. So it was super quick.
Yeah, that was super quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So typically, from the time that I met Sarah, 4 or 5 days later, which is not normal. That is abnormal. That's one of the reasons I wanted Eric here as a guest, is that we had so many unique things about both buying and selling on with these guys that, to me, it gives a really great perspective for our listeners from both sides, buying and selling. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah, kind of sheds light on some of the things that the clients may not know their agents are doing for them on the back end, right?
That's right.
So one of the things that, a lot of people, this is kind of tapping into a slightly unrelated topic, but a topic that a lot of listeners might be interested in is, we've noticed that there is a highly reduced number of homes on the market because of a number of factors, but COVID being a very large one of them. So can you kind of tell our listeners what your experience was like as a seller occupying a property during COVID while it was on the market?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. There's some apprehension as far as people wanting to come inside the house because of COVID. They're kind of worried about the residents. Are they keeping things clean? But at the end of the day, everybody, obviously, they want to buy a house. So you just request at the time. COVID was more during the outbreak time rather than it's kind of the recession now. But so just make sure everybody wear a mask. Which you rely on. Which I relied on you to relay that to the other realtors bringing the customers to wear a mask and try not to, touch everything, but touch what you need to touch, but not everything if you could.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just use hand sanitizer. You have a hand bottle of sanitizer just before and afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, so, we always try to make sure that we take a couple of precautions just to be on the safe side, always have the sanitizer, gloves, shoe covers, that type of thing, because, it's tough to go through a house and not touch anything, right? You want to open up the cabinets, you got to open up some of the doors to get into different places. So, but yeah, there's always precautions that are being taken. If you're working with a professional who's, doing this on a regular basis, that they're going to take some extra steps to ensure your security, throughout the process.
So once we got your house active, how long do you think it was before we started getting offers?
The first day. The very first day we had, I think it was 12 or 15 people come by, and we already started getting offers. You recommended as far as at least waiting one more day. I know we had several offers, but wait till the next day before we went over all of them, just to get all the the best offers as we could. And like I said, within 2 days we had well over ask.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about too is that the way this actually went about. So typically what I like to do, and I think I explained this to you and Sarah, was that I wanted to get your house on the market on a Thursday. Going into the weekend, we have pictures taken, we've got a nice portfolio put together. So when people are going through Zillow or Realtor.com or wherever it is that they're looking, Redfin, that they oh, wait, there's nice pictures. They want to see nice pictures.
Right.
We couldn't do that. And I was talking with Sarah, and she said she wanted it done ASAP. So I actually took my camera, which I would never do.
Right.
I'm not a photographer. I hire somebody for that.
Right.
But I took my camera out there, and I remember taking 2 pictures before I went into the house. And those are the only 2 pictures I still, to this day, have taken of their house. But then once we got it on the market, literally, I came home, I knocked everything out. Then I had to run to the office because y'all had provided me some documents that I needed to get scanned. So I took off to my office, and it was like 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night, and my phone is already ringing from 4 different realtors.
Yeah.
And it had only been on the market for 30 minutes. So I knew it was going to be pretty quick. And it was the next day when we presented the offer on the house that you wanted to buy.
Right.
So to kind of give the listeners a little bit of an idea about how contingency works is it depends on the market that you're in. Right now, contingency offers are not happening. They're just not. The market is just too hot. We don't have enough inventory as it is, so a contingency offer is not going to be accepted. The contingency, and typically in every contract, there are a number of contingencies that have to be met. Finances, those are contingencies. Inspections are contingencies. But what I'm referring to now is that the sale of another property in order to buy a new home. That contingency is no longer being accepted. It's just not. And it doesn't need to be. We have such a hot market, so many buyers out here that don't need to sell before they buy, that's who's actually buying the homes right now. So, with you guys, that was the last contingency offer I have seen or even heard about.
Yeah,
and that was
lucky.
6 months
yeah,
ago.
Extremely lucky, yeah.
The market's changed a lot in the last 6 months. It's crazy.
It has changed, and something that kind of just crossed my mind when you brought that up is that one of the these contingent offers are definitely less common, but something that we're seeing kind of replacing it is the seller leasebacks as kind of a a way to work around that right now. The seller leasebacks, instead of having, okay, well, I need to sell my house first. It's, okay, well, let me sell my house to you first, but let me rent it back from you for a month and a half or 2 months while I go find the next place and close on that deal. So, that's kind of just another interesting dynamic at play in today's market.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, thank you for explaining the contingencies for us. So let's kind of step into what it was like offering on the next home, because you talked about, all right, you guys met up one night, you got the house on the market that night, and then it was the next day that you actually got the offer submitted, right?
On the new home, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So the contingency offer, what was the process like, as far as negotiating tactics, Dad?
So do you remember how much that house was, Eric?
It was listed for
like $540.
$540, and I just lowered it from $545 to $540, I believe.
Right.
Somewhere in that area.
Right. It had been listed higher previously. So, and it had sat on the market, which in today's terms is completely different. It had been on the market for like 40 days. That is unheard of in today's market. I mean, today it's lucky to be there for 6 days. No kidding. If it goes longer than 6 days, you might have it priced too high. And I say that in jest, but not really. It's a possibility. So I believed that the house was priced too high in the beginning, but there was a reason why that we didn't discover until later on. But then they lowered the price, and then, typically when we're submitting an offer on a contingency, most of the time, if the house is priced right, we go in at a full price offer. But I couldn't find the comps to justify paying a full price offer on this house. So I remember we went in,
I think $530. It was listed at $540. I think it went in at $530, and then they came back at $535.
Yeah. So that was where we wound up with. So as far as the negotiation on my side of it, literally it was, and see, what a lot of people don't understand about real estate agents, we don't just negotiate the deal itself. We also have to negotiate with our clients. So as a negotiator, I need to find out what is their bottom line, where are they at, and what can I do to try to help them out, while at the same time not trying to insult the seller by lowballing an offer so bad that it's crazy. So I think we came up with something that worked very, very well.
Yeah, perfect.
And got us under contract very quickly.
Yeah. So this is when things started to get a little bit hairy, if I understand everything correctly, right? So it was once you received the executed offer back from the seller, they accepted the offer, it had all been negotiated, that you received this email that you started to mention earlier, Eric. So why don't we kind of step into that a little bit?
Yeah, so initially we were going back and forth. Literally, I don't think it took more than 2 hours to get this thing worked out, because I'd already talked to the listing agent earlier in the week. So I had spoken to Sarah, so I knew that she really wanted to jump forward on this house, but we were going to have to sell theirs first, and I couldn't meet with the two of them until Monday. So I knew that wasn't going to happen. So now we're praying over the weekend that this house doesn't go under contract. But in the meantime, I had been talking with a listing agent. So because she and I are already talking and we're working things out, she already knew it was going to be a contingent offer. She knew where their house was located. She had done her own research as well to know that I wasn't kidding, that the house would be off the market very quickly and that we were going to price it aggressively. So with all of that, and mind you, both sides of my brain are working on this, the listing side and the buyer side, because I'm representing these folks in two different transactions. So with all of that, it didn't take us long to actually get it under contract. However, within 30 minutes of the ink being put on there, I mean, you guys had just signed.
Yep.
And I get the contract sent over to the listing agent. She forwards me an email from the seller stating that the buyers now needed to go and get a loan to take over the loan for the solar panels that had just been put on the house. Well, that was brand new information. That never came up anywhere in anything that we had. And the listing agent didn't know about it either. So we got caught completely off guard with that. You remember how that all went?
No, yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
In the beginning, yeah, I was kind of devastated almost because I thought I was going to lose the house.
Put a little stress on the
Oh,
family?
yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I remember. My phone was blowing up.
Yeah.
Sarah was not happy.
Oh, yeah.
So as far as this solar panel issue came up, so in our listing agreements, and this goes back to the seller and his listing agent, there's a page in there, and you guys know this because we did the same with you all. You remember me asking you about liens on the house and things of that nature?
Absolutely.
Whether or not you made sure you paid up on your HOA dues and there were no mechanics liens and things like that against the house.
Right.
So there's no way for me to really verify that without opening title on your home to make sure that somebody didn't sneak in there and put a lien against your house that you may not know about. So apparently that was not done on this other house that they were buying. Because had that been done originally, and that's one of the reasons why when I get a new listing, one of the first things I want to do is open title. Let's find out if there's something else on that title that might make it a little complicated to close later on. Well, the listing agent on this one, she didn't do that. And the seller never disclosed to her about these additional liens that were on this property. And it turns out there were a total of 3 liens on the property.
Wow.
So there was the main mortgage and then 2 other mechanics liens. So, of course, those were discovered. And in Texas, those liens have to be paid out of the proceeds off the sale of the house. Well, the seller in this case was trying to get the buyers to pay for the solar panels that he and his wife agreed to put on the house to begin with. So the trouble comes is on the buyer side of it, if Eric and Sarah have to turn around and get another loan, then what is that going to do to their debt to income ratio? Is it going to make it or force them to where they're no longer able to qualify for the mortgage on the home? Well, that is a possibility. Turns out it probably wouldn't have mattered in your case, but that's not the point.
Right.
The point simply is that this sort of stuff should have been disclosed to us in the very beginning, and it wasn't. There were no exclusions. There was nothing, none of this mentioned anywhere. But the seller had already made statements that he was not going to sell the house. And, you know, of course, I had several discussions with the listing agent that Eric and Sarah are unaware of, but a lot of these conversations centered around the fact that this guy was going to file bankruptcy. He was going to do a number of other things to try to muddy this up to prevent him from having to sell the house in its current condition to Eric and Sarah. And of course, I wasn't going to have any of that. So then I start talking with Eric, and boy, they were not happy. Of course, it's not that they weren't unhappy with us in the process or any of that. It's more about, it seems like the seller was trying to pull something shady.
Yeah.
So at that point, that's when I told them, I said, you need to get an attorney. Have an attorney review all of this, and let's see where that takes us. Eric, you want to talk about what that process was?
Sure. Yeah, luckily, we have an attorney in the family, got the family right, so still expensive, but wasn't as expensive as it could have been. So basically, after we contacted him, explained the situation, he agreed there's a breach of contract because they indicated they weren't going to go through with the sale of the house, so breaching the contract. So what he did was he sent a demand letter to the homeowner and his realtor, basically saying if you're going to breach the contract, you're going to be sued. So follow up as you promised on the you signed the contract. Proceed as you sign on the contract, or you'll be sued, basically.
Yeah. So in Texas, when you violate a condition of your contract, it could be labeled as specific performance, and in that regard, you're looking at 3 times the amount of damages being awarded to the plaintiff. So you really don't want to be caught up in something like that. Which leads me to one of my biggest points that I want to make to our sellers. Our sellers, pay attention to this one. This is important. Do not hide anything about your house. Disclose, 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 disclose. It doesn't matter what it is. If the water heater burst and it flooded the house out, disclose it. If you got new solar panels and you're carrying a freaking loan on it, disclose it.
If you have to ask, if you need to disclose it, disclose it.
The answer is yes. It's like when I used to teach detectives. If you have to ask, do I need to collect that evidence? The answer is yes. It's always yes. I wonder if I should collect it. Yes. I wonder if I should tell other sellers or other buyers about this. Yes.
Yeah, because you only get one shot.
You don't get in trouble for over disclosing. You get in trouble for under disclosing.
Absolutely. So let's take a moment to talk a little bit more specifically about solar panels, because I know, in the state of Texas, it is still somewhat of a new issue. In other states around the United States, they've got a little bit more regulations in place because they're a little bit more prominent in those areas. So let's kind of talk about solar panels and how they relate to the purchase and sale of real estate.
So solar panels are what we call permanent fixtures to a house. So one of the ways, and I think I mentioned this to Eric and Sarah too, is when I was going through your house, I mentioned that take your house and turn it upside down and shake it. Whatever falls out is yours. That's personal property. Whatever doesn't fall out is affixed to the house. That is real estate. So these solar panels, even though there's a little caveat to some of them, sometimes these solar panels are rented. And if they're rented, they're not really a permanent fixture. That lease is going to have to be worked out between the new buyer and the leaseor, or the person or the people that are currently leasing it are going to have to make that stuff go away. So all of that has to be disclosed in the beginning. What is the plan behind that if it's a leased piece of property that's attached to the house? That's also like water softeners. Water softeners can be purchased or they can be leased. Mm-hmm. So if there's a lease behind some of this stuff, that really does need to be disclosed at the beginning. And then you have to, as the seller, you have to decide very quickly, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to make them come and remove those items before the house hits the market? Or are you going to make sure that the potential buyers understand that those may not be there? And if you're going to remove solar panels, one of the things to keep in mind is that your roof has been penetrated with these panels. So there's going to be holes in the roof that have to also be repaired. So that's something to take into account once you have those things removed. So, but in Texas, if it's permanently affixed to the house, it's real estate. If it is not, it is personal property. Refrigerators, washers, dryers, those are personal property. However, if the cabinet has been modified in a way to take only that refrigerator, now the refrigerator is seen as like the stove, where it's built in. If it's built in, it's a permanent fixture. So now it becomes part of the real estate transaction itself. So one of the things, Eric, that I mentioned to Daniel early on is that when I first met you guys, y'all were already working with a lender.
Right.
So with that, and one of the things that I mention all the time to our buyers and some of our other listeners is you have to surround yourself with a team of professionals that you feel comfortable working with. So you know that I have a group of folks that I refer all the time, whether it's lenders or inspectors or, if you need a plumber, an electrician, whatever you need.
We use some, they're great. Yeah.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
So, but if you've already got somebody that you feel comfortable with working with, I'm not going to discourage you from leaving your guy. And did I do that with your guy?
Not at all.
And how did you feel about your particular lender?
He was awesome. He was great.
I agree. He really was. He's not anybody that was somebody that I had worked with in the past, but I saved his number because I'm sure we'll be doing business with him at some point in the future. He did a really fantastic job. But then you also have you had a real estate team,
right?
So I hope we performed the way we were supposed to.
Absolutely.
I hope we exceeded that.
Yes.
But then you also had a legal team behind you, and this is not something that we see in an everyday transaction. But you had family and some other advice from some folks that could actually help you out. How did that help as far as you and Sarah? How did that make you feel after that kind of resolved itself? Was there a sense of relief? Or?
For sure. Obviously a little anxiety at first, but it felt good knowing, we had people that knew what they were doing throughout the process.
Okay. It's kind of like you're the conductor of the orphan or the
orchestra.
The orchestra. You're standing up there conducting everybody, and everybody's doing what you want, but it's still very stressful because, if you wind up screwing something up, it can hurt you in the long run.
Absolutely.
So you also had an inspector, which actually I provided for you.
Yeah.
And I remember us going through. I think we went out there twice on your deal.
Yeah.
So we had that going as well. So, and then of course title company. This time you worked with 2 separate title companies.
Yes. Yours was way better than the other house.
I like to hear that.
Yes.
I like to hear that.
Much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. So the important things about title companies that a lot of folks don't know is they provide a service that most people never even hear about, which in a way is kind of cool, but in another way it's also very it's hard to talk about them because they do the stuff that is so far behind the scenes we don't really pay attention to it until we show up, and now all of a sudden we're signing all these documents with the title company, but we don't even know what it is that we're signing most of the time. So, well, we do, but and hopefully the buyers and sellers do by the time they get to the closing table. They know what they're looking at. But all of that is because the title company is able to organize and put all that together. And a lot of people don't realize it, but title companies are supported by attorneys. Attorneys put all these documents together to make sure that there's a nice, easy, smooth, legal transaction.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, I mean, we kind of touched on just about everything that I think we had planned out. Is there any kind of closing thoughts that either of you want to share with our listeners before we move into the next segment of the episode and give our listeners a little bit of an opportunity to get to know you personally, Eric?
No, just like I said earlier, make sure when you hire somebody to buy or sell the house, they know what they're doing. And that the solar panels weren't the only issue. I had other issues with my house as far as the roof issue on my house that we squared away. So there's a couple other stressful areas that Roger helped me through. So I was just throwing that in there just to make, you helped out with that too and made it a smooth transition.
Yeah, it's funny. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
We did. We had to get you a new roof. And,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we also knew too, going through the house is looking at, okay, y'all had asked me a dozen times about different things that they should or shouldn't do. Should we paint this? Should we repair that? Should we do this? Should we do that? And my advice to them was, if you think you need to do it, go ahead. But why don't we wait for the inspection report to come back and see whether or not it's something you have to do? Because if you don't have to spend the money on it, I wouldn't worry about it right now. If it's something that's unsightly and you really want to fix it, please fix it. And I think the buyer was pretty happy with what he got.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what exactly happened with the roof?
Needed a new roof. And we didn't discover that until the inspection.
Right.
So the inspector got up there. They sent back to us and said, hey, something's going on with the roof. We need to have it evaluated. And that's when we had our roofer go out there and take a look at it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they got that roof done in, 2 weeks?
Yeah, or sooner.
It was very, very, very quick. And it was an insurance claim. And we knew that because we had that big hailstorm back in July of last year.
Right.
So, and a lot of people didn't pay attention to that. I mean, I haven't had my roof inspected, but, none of our neighbors have. Well, the ones that don't have hail damage, so it's not a big deal.
Right.
But in his neighborhood, I knew that they had hail damage out there. But it wasn't something that crossed my mind at the time. It had been so long past. But yeah, fortunately, we got him a new roof.
Great. Well, that kind of wraps up all the information that we had for our listeners today. So let's kind of jump into these last 5 questions so that our listeners can kind of get to know Eric Deba a little bit. So, hey, Eric, what was the first concert that you ever went to?
First concert was Olivia Newton-John.
Wow,
Yes,
really?
yes. My dad took me to it.
How about that? I met her one time. She did a benefit. I don't remember which hotel she was at, but I was working security at the hotel, and they assigned me to her as her detail.
Okay.
Very, very sweet lady. Very, very nice lady. I have a great story about her, too.
What is your favorite hobby?
Pre-COVID was working out, but I kind of jacked it up. Besides that, watching football. Watching the Miami Dolphins, particularly.
There you go. This is always a challenging question for some of our listeners, or rather for some of our guests. Who's the most memorable person that you think you've ever met?
Besides me.
Besides you. Well, can't say that. That's a tough question. Probably, and I'm trying to remember his name. It was a sergeant major when I was in the Army. As far as the way he conducted himself, and he always, he led by example, and that was big on me because I don't know, whoever was in the military, sometimes you'll see leaders that don't lead by example, but he did everything. He was always doing PT, and you go up and talk to him, ask for advice, and he would always give you good advice. He showed you what he did to get where he was, and that's stayed with me for a long time.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you know what? When I got asked this question, I too had an old leader of mine back when I used to work in the restaurant business, so I can relate to that.
Sergeant Major Gunther, that's his name. I remember his name now.
Great. Yeah. What is the most exotic place that you've ever visited?
Well, I was in the military, so I've been to Germany, Spain, Albania, Kosovo, France. Exotic. I mean, it's kind of how you define the word exotic, but I'll say my favorite place, that I like to go was Anne Frank's house in Amsterdam. Just seeing the history. I'm Jewish, so just seeing that was unique. Knowing that a lot of, especially when I was 19 years old, it's from America. A lot of 19-year-olds didn't get that chance, or still don't have that chance to do it. So see that part of history was really cool.
Yeah, I've actually seen that house as well. It's incredible. That whole, it's funny. One of the things that I always compare it to is we go to New York and we think the buildings in New York are old.
Right.
And then we go over to Amsterdam where the buildings are thousands of years old. Incredible. Yeah, truly. That's a great place.
It is, yeah.
Well, Eric, I really want to thank you very much for taking the time to join us on the show today. It's been very, very beneficial, and I hope that our listeners were able to get some good content and some good feedback on what's going on in the real estate market and some of the things that they can do to try to avoid some of the hiccups that you had go on during your transactions. Guys, we really love sharing information with you guys. Let us know what you want to hear about next. And we hope to see you guys on the next episode.
Leave us a review. The reviews are extremely important. It gets us more playtime. It moves us up a little bit in the rankings. And as you can tell, this is a lot of work. It's very consistent work that we have to do all the time, and we really do appreciate the reviews. The other thing, and I mentioned this in our last episode, and I'm going to continue to say this, referrals. You heard me mention it just a few minutes ago with Eric, that we have a database of folks that we can refer you to. So it doesn't matter what it is that you need. You need lawn care, we got you back. If you need a plumber, we got you back. You need legal advice, we can get you some legal advice. Doesn't matter what kind of legal advice. We've got people that we can put you in touch with. So just reach out to us, and by all means, if you need a realtor, we're here for you. Reach out to us.
Thank you guys, and we'll see you on the next episode. Y'all take care and have a great week.
See you.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Chappell Real Estate Show. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and leave us a review. Find us on social media at Chappell Realty Group and online at chappellrealtygroup.com. Until next time.